Last thing, watching the Super Bowl last night, kudos to the NFL. They got the season through, and it was exciting to watch. But is there going to be a time when we're going to be no masks? When is that time? If you had to guess, going to a sports game, going to a theater, going to a concert without a mask?
You know, Brett, that will really be dependent upon how we get the level of virus in the community down. If we can get, and I have used this as an estimate, it's not definitive, that if we can get 70 to 85% of our population vaccinated and get to what we would hope would be to a degree of herd immunity, which really is an umbrella or a veil of protection against the community, where the level of virus is so low, it's not a threat at all, then at that point you could start thinking in terms of not having to have uniform wearing of masks. But we're certainly not near there yet. When do I think that would occur? You know, it's very difficult to predict, Brett, but if everything falls into the right place and we get this under control, it is conceivable that you might be able to pull back a bit on some of the public health measures as we get into the late fall of this year.
Okay, I mean, this is pure gaslighting right now, because you're talking about 70 to 85% vaccination, 70 to 80% efficacy of these vaccinations, and only then. And remember, they're now saying, oh, by the way, this virus is going to be with us forever. You know, we're not getting rid of this thing. This isn't something that, we're not eradicating COVID-19. So the goalposts are being shifted again, Terry.
No, the biggest problem here is that they keep lying to us. They don't trust the American people with just the truth. They've been moving the goalposts from the beginning, lying to us. Oh, it's 2 weeks to slow the spread. Remember that? If you don't listen, they keep talking about the enemies of democracy, right? If you don't trust the American people with the truth, do you really trust them to vote? Do you really trust them to make the decisions about the future leaders and the future of this country? You don't. These are the actual enemies of democracy. They don't want the truth. They want the power. Yes. And that's why they lie to us.
Jack, this goes back to what you were saying here in the war room last night, right? Which is these people are supposed to have had these contingency plans for decades, supposed to have studied all these different types of viruses and public health measures, and had enough masks and ventilators and all of this, right? And it just didn't happen this time. It did not happen. That goes to the point, which is that Dr. Anthony Fauci, forget the NIH and all these other things, Dr. Anthony Fauci isn't fit for purpose, quite frankly. And so you put all of that together. At what point does he think that people who disbelieve him are going to start believing him, when he changes the rules of physics again, when he changes the rules of biology again, when he pushes the goalpost further and further and further along the field? Jack, I do not understand at this point in time why even the Democratic Party of America would want to be anywhere near Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Well, what's really amazing is that he is in his world where he controls the diagnosis, he controls the prognosis, he controls the treatment, and yet we can look at the data ourselves. We still have some modicum of freedom in this country and freedom of information. We can see that hospitalizations are down. We can see that cases are down. This is North America aggregate numbers. I've spoken to friends of mine that are in this field. They're saying they are seeing since inauguration, really, that cases and numbers have been down, whereas we haven't seen a full rollout of the vaccine yet, anywhere near the numbers that Fauci is talking about. We're still seeing states like Florida that are open, other states that are more locked down. So there's this huge hodgepodge. In Canada, it's the same. Some provinces are under extreme lockdown measures. Other provinces are under less extreme measures. But what's interesting is that this infection, this virus, doesn't actually seem to be responding to the public policies the way that we would expect in the data. So the question then becomes, what is really driving this? How much of it is government leadership, and how much of it is the virus' either natural cycle, or, of course, as the WHO has told us, that we're not going to know where this thing came from for years, but it definitely didn't come from a lab. We're here in Wuhan sitting next to our Chinese communist minders, and we can definitely tell you there's no need to investigate that spooky lab anymore.
Jack, the front page of the Daily Mail, the most powerful newspaper in the world right now, the homepage basically asks the question, who does the WHO think it's fooling? this latest development, after a year, after even the WHO have had to admit after a year plus of not having information from the Chinese Communist Party, not being allowed access to Wuhan, let alone to the lab, but even to the so-called wet market where they first claimed that this came from. And then they had the story up about, oh, it came into China from some frozen food from somewhere. Again, the story keeps changing, the narratives keep shifting, and now the WHO's out there saying, hey, actually, there's no truth behind this lab theory. You got to just let it go, guys. That, if anything, Jack, tells me if the WHO is saying it, there probably is almost total incontrovertible truth towards the lab theory.
Right. It's almost like they're saying, please look at the lab more. It's almost like they're confirming it. Remember, go back to their own words. The WHO team told us we may not know for years. It's going to take a long time for us to pinpoint this back. We have to do the science. Remember, trust the science, trust the data. But then they tell us after 1 week, just 1 week since going into that lab, actually, we don't know if they had engagement or any real access into the work of Shi Zhongli, the Batwoman of China, her own title, whether or not they were able to look at those studies, find out what they were doing, because we know that the lab took down the database that was previously available. Then they completely wiped it from the internet. We don't know if they wiped the archives, though, being that it's China, your guess is as good as mine. But we're told after 1 week that it's definitely not the lab. I'm sorry, that's not how you conduct investigations. You don't wait a year for the criminals to clean up the crime scene before you send in CSI, right? You go immediately, right, and you don't let your minders lead you by the nose and tell you where to go. But that's what we've got. Now they're talking about these frozen food theories, and you're seeing some Chinese online, some of these Wu Mao army apparatchiks. They're starting to talk about India. They're talking about Brazil. They're looking at the Chinese geopolitical adversaries like Modi, like Bolsonaro, and they're trying to pin it on them for their own geopolitical One Belt, One Road initiatives and strategies, rather than actually go back and admit that this thing may have come from these gain of function experiments that were going on at that P4 lab.
Jack, I want to get your thoughts on what Xi Jinping must be thinking throughout all this. But before we do, I want to come back a little closer to home, because I think Xi Jinping can't believe his luck right now. But let's come back closer to home for a second. Terry, on the screen behind me, and I know a lot of the audience gets triggered that we have CNN on the screens behind us, but we do it. Firstly, we do it to trigger you, because you should be angry, you should be riled up about what's on CNN, because it's just a tissue of lies every single day, and I need you seeing it and being alert to it. I know you know CNN lies. I want you to know the specific lies every single day. Because as Jack Posobiec did with AOC, and as we do with the Brian Sicknick story, and every single day we go through things, we are going to pick them apart on the truth and on reality and on a line-by-line basis. That's what they do to our side. It's no good just turning them off and saying, okay, we're going to ignore you. They're not going away if you ignore them. They're going away if you destroy them. So I want to bring Terry Schilling into conversation. You looked at the screen behind me. You said, this is why we lose. What did you see on the screen?
It was the coronavirus relief payments, and it was the Democrat plan versus the Republican plan.
Okay.
And the Democrat plan is very aggressive to give relief to working families. It phases out for a married couple, for example, at $150,000 per year, and then immediately phases out around $200,000. The Republican plan was $1,000 compared to the Democrats' plan of $1,400, but it phased out at $40,000 and $80,000 for a married couple.
So it's so wildly out of touch.
But here's why it's incredibly out of touch. These numbers, these income numbers, these thresholds, they're based on the 2019 tax filings.
Right.
So you're telling me that if you made over 80 grand a year in 2019, and then you go lose your job in 2020 because the government shut down your business, you don't get any relief?
Right.
This is insane.
Right.
And we need better leaders in the Republican Party, because this is why we lose.
But is this the Republican plan, or is this, the Koch plan?
This is the Koch plan. That's
right.
There's a good group of Republicans in the party who understand very simply that the government created this problem. Right. They wrecked the economy. Right. They didn't contain the virus, and we have to pay the people for all of the damage that they did. Right. There's a good group of them, and they're growing, but they still don't have the power.
And by the way, it's not the government, right? Here's the thing. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the highest paid bureaucrat, with his false, faulty, flawed information at the beginning of the virus, Nancy Pelosi partying it up in Chinatown, when we could have been crushing the virus at the very beginning. Nancy Pelosi wanted people out on the streets. Joe Biden called it xenophobic to close the borders.
They told us not to wear masks.
So they told us not to wear masks. Fauci said, do not wear masks. It doesn't make a difference. And then he came back and he admitted that he lied. So the bureaucrats, all of this, created this position, shut down people's businesses. They're still angry. They're still angry that Governor DeSantis is doing a magnificent job down in Florida without shutting down the state, right? And now they're saying, and now the Koch people in the Republican Party, you know, these Cato, free market is everything, money is everything, capital is everything. They forget about God. They forget about the family. They forget about community. They forget about what it means to conserve anything. Right. The operative part of the word conservative. They want to dismiss all that. They say the market takes care of everything. And by the way, because we're fiscal hawks, you're not getting any cash out of us. Right. And that is fundamentally, I think you put it right. You said it's why we lose.
Good luck getting any type of tax revenues back while families are losing their homes, losing their cars, losing their businesses that they've had for their entire lives. Anthony Fauci and this cabal of progressives in our government shut down 40% of small businesses permanently. Who the hell does this guy think he is? Who is he to tell us that we have to wear a mask indefinitely?
No offense, Terry, but he's the highest paid bureaucrat in your government. That's who he is. So you say, who the hell does he think he is? He thinks he is whoever you have allowed him to be.
Right. And that's the thing. Everyone says, you know, this is unconstitutional. This won't pass muster. This is going to get struck down. No, the Supreme Court, the Constitution is simply a piece of paper if the people aren't going to stand up and unelect the bad guys who are reinterpreting it in the wrong way. We have to stand up, and this is why I love your guys' audience. It's the most powerful audience in the world. This is going to be the audience that changes everything.
Posobiec, we've got about 90 seconds here. Are we, is Terry Schilling, is Raheem Kassar, are we secret communists because we want, you know, people to get a decent package out of this whole thing? Are we socialists? Are we pushing people to universal basic income?
No, what you're doing is you're preaching actual conservatism, which is something that hasn't been heard for a long time in Washington, D.C., because it's been replaced by corporatism, the same corporatism that's allowing who to become richer and far more wealthy and powerful throughout all of these lockdowns, the Jeff Bezoses of the world, the Amazon.com of the world, pushing people more and more into the gig economy while putting the brunt on these small businesses, these brick and mortar businesses. I think there are people who know exactly what is going on here, and it is one of the fastest roll-ups of power in human history.
Wow. Jack, where can people reach you?
Find me One American News, and of course at Twitter at Jack Posobiec, Posobiec, and on the Telegram. The Telegram is blowing up, over 150,000 already.
No, I love Jack's Telegram. You guys got to go check it out. Jack Posobiec, One American News, thank you so much for joining us here today. Back more Terry Schilling in just a moment. We've got a great lineup in the final 45 of this show today. Don't go anywhere. War Room Pandemic, Terry Schilling, American Principles Project, Raheem Kassam, Stephen K. Bannon on special assignment today. And by the way, the new live chat is on fire. Get that at americasvoice.news. You can chat in live and I read them in real time. See you in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Why haven't you called Xi Jinping?
Well, we haven't had occasion to talk to one another yet. There's no reason not to call him. I probably spent more time with Xi Jinping, I'm told, than any world leader has, because I had 24, 25 hours of private meetings with him when I was vice president, traveled 17,000 miles with him. I know him pretty well.
There's a lot to talk about.
A lot to talk about, a whole lot to talk about. And he's very bright, he's very tough. He doesn't have, and I don't mean as a criticism, just a reality, he doesn't have a democratic small d bone in his body, but he is The question is, I've said to him all along that we need not have a conflict, but there's going to be extreme competition. And I'm not going to do it the way that he knows this, because he's been sending signals as well, that I'm not going to do it the way Trump did. We're going to focus on international rules of the road.
I almost feel like I don't have to say anything as a response to that. I think people will watch that and be utterly, utterly devastated by the way their president is dealing with the largest national security threat facing the United States, and that is the repeated, long-standing encroachment by the Chinese Communist Party into everything you do. Everything you do. Guess what? Turn your coffee cup over. Made in China. Look at your laptop in front of you. Made in China. Your television. Made in China. Your rug. Made in China. Kudos to the increasingly small number of you out there who managed to shop all American, right? But this is the man who spent 40 years selling the country out, who ran on a ticket saying, actually, this time I think I can do something. And they claim he won the election. They claim he won. And what are the first things that he did? China can go propagandize in the schools again. That's a new executive order, overriding the Trump administration's executive order saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't allow Confucius Institutes into the schools. Nope. Beijing Biden says, it's cool. It's good with me. What are the other things? Listen to not just the word. The reason I wanted to play that, and if you're on the audio of this side of things on this show, if you're listening to this on a podcast, go and find that clip. Joe Biden, Xi Jinping, what was it, CBS? Go and find that clip and look at his face when he's saying what he's saying. He sounds like he is prostrate before Xi Jinping in person, like he's personally going through a struggle session in real time. He looks petrified of saying anything. He goes, hey, I don't mean this as a criticism, but he doesn't have a democratic bone in his body. It is a criticism. You should mean it as a criticism. And the President of the United States should not feel ashamed or afraid to criticize that about the dictator of the Chinese Communist Party. The truth of the matter is Joe Biden's foreign policy has got off on a worse foot than his domestic policy, and that's saying something. Because his administration, his regime came into power saying, we've got a plan on COVID. And what was the first thing they told you about their plan on COVID? We can't do anything about it. We actually, there's not, we're just going to have to ride this thing out. And by the way, it's not gone for a long time. Day one, we'll have checks in the hands, $2,000 checks in the hands of the American public. Didn't happen. And on day 5, they come out with, oh, you already got 600 of it, by the way, so we're lowering it to 1,400. Still can't get it done. Still people are waiting. Day 1. It is an extraordinary circumstance on foreign policy, and we have one of the leading, longest-standing, neutral, I genuinely say neutral, because this guy holds me to account when he thinks I'm going off the rails. Reporters in this town from the Washington Free Beacon, Adam Kredo joins us on the line now. Adam, thank you so much for making the time this morning.
Happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
So, Adam, I mean, I think a lot of people suspected that Biden's foreign policy, and this is somewhat, you work in foreign policy, you work in national security, I think everybody suspected that it would be weak. I think everybody suspected that he would kowtow to China, that he would loosen the reins on Iran, that he would, defer back to multilateral, multinational organizations like the European Union and NATO and the World Health Organization. But actually, everything we've seen so far, I think is even worse than I suspected would happen in the first couple of weeks. Adam, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of what you'd expect and maybe some that you wouldn't have expected. People probably saw yesterday we've rejoined the UN Human Rights Council, which, as we know, is one of the most anti-Israel bodies on the UN, not to mention that its membership includes China and Russia and other wonderful human rights abusers. It's a joke of an organization. The Trump administration pulled us out of it in 2018, but that's one of Biden's first moves. So I think that ideologically tells you where he's coming from. We have a new Iran envoy This is a man who was too extreme for the former Obama administration. He was fired by the Obama campaign in 2008 for holding unauthorized talks with Hamas, the terror group. So he's now running our Iran policy, and now rumors that a fellow named Matthew Duss, who is a top aide to Bernie Sanders, a veteran anti-Israel activist, might be moving over to the State Department. And just to put a cherry on it, we have at the NSC, the White House National Security Council, the fellow running our intel, one of the most powerful positions, really, is a guy who spent his youth organizing in the pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel boycott movement, the BDS movement. So these are the folks that are coming in, and I expect more of it, and I think the foreign policy will reflect that.
So, I mean, not even so much as America second, but in a lot of these circumstances, America last. Looking at what they're prioritizing, like you say, very pro-Palestinian causes. There's been a lot of multilateralism across Europe now. You see the way he speaks about Xi Jinping. He's put as his Asia czar. We had this story up at the National Pulse yesterday. Huge story, by the way. And I'm kind of even disappointed at how little pickup it had. Maybe this is. Maybe my editor's eye is off on this one, but I don't think it is. His Asia czar, Kurt Campbell, somebody who has worked with, attended conferences with, spoken on the same stage as Patrick Ho from the CEFC, the guy who Hunter Biden referred to as the effing spy chief of China. This is who Biden's putting in as Asia czar right now. Adam, you're tied in to all the national security circles in town. Some of them like you, some of them like you a little less. But what is the overarching theme that you're getting? Are people in Washington D.C. okay with the way Biden's handling things? And by the way, let me ask you this: do they even think Biden's in charge, or has he kind of just delegated all of this to Ron Klain and all the cronies in there?
Yeah, it's unclear to me how much attention he's actually playing. Well, you see in the big roles, the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, and senior roles, obviously Biden has a hand, right? Blinken is a pretty middle-of-the-road guy, actually quite parv in terms of his foreign policy. It's all the hires surrounding this that I think are catching people's eyes. And, yeah, there's some amount of surprise. Also, some people are not. Look, I think in the Middle East, which is a primary example, a good case study for foreign policy writ large, we're rolling back everything the Trump administration did. But what does that actually mean? That means rolling back that fundamental realignment of the Middle East that saw a common enemy in Iran and saw an ally in Israel and other more Western-oriented nations. That means stopping partnerships with Saudi Arabia, despite what you believe about the country and its own struggles with human rights. I think that it's been pretty clear about its opposition to Iran and the regional terrorism that it supports. The Biden administration moved yesterday to roll back the Trump administration's designation of the Houthi rebels in Yemen. These are Iranian-backed militias that have caused quite a catastrophe in that country. So again, it's a realignment to this wishful thinking that we can conduct diplomacy with countries that want nuclear weapons and want to kill the West.
Adam, it's an incredibly comprehensive and concise report you're giving us here about Joe Biden's foreign policy, and we want to have you back on more because while I think a lot of the nation's news media will claim that news cycles are now slower in the absence of Trump and everybody can go back to normalcy and everything's calmer, and you see all these tweets from people being like, hey, isn't this great? I think it was Amy Klobuchar last week who said, for the first time on a Sunday, I didn't have to fire off a tweet challenging something that the president said. No, you chose to ignore a bunch of the news and that CNN won't cover and that MSNBC won't cover, and you guys are doing it there at the Free Beacon. And Adam Kredo, where can people find you? Where can they follow you?
Yep, you can see me on freebeacon.com and also on Twitter if you want all my majestical thoughts. It's Kredo, Kredo, and the number 0, Kredo 0.
All right, Adam, and I think you and I are getting together later today. I've got to pick your brain on a couple more things. Adam, thank you so much for joining us here.
My pleasure, brother.
It's incredible, Terry. I mean, I don't think people quite realize the scale of how much this regime is actually doing to unroll all of these steps. And on foreign policy, you look at how they're going to plunge the Middle East back into turmoil as a result of their sponsorship, their state sponsorship of a state sponsor of terror, which is Iran.
No, that's exactly right. Look, this you can tell that this administration is not serious when it comes to foreign policy because they don't.
Wait, but Jen Psaki says it's his first love.
Oh, I know. Jen Psaki is she's a sweetheart.
Yeah.
But you can tell they aren't serious because they don't recognize China as the threat that it is.
No, they recognize it as a bank.
Yes, they're making money off it. Their friends are all making money off it. Listen, let's be very clear about what China did. They destroyed the American economy, and they have suffered zero consequences or blame.
Zero. They actually destroyed the Western world, is what they did. They destroyed the Western world, brought it to its knees in one fell swoop.
We have chains around our capital because of China.
And by the way, they are now renaming Oxford's Wickham chair, which is one of the oldest, I think goes back to the 13th century in physics. They're calling it the 10-cent Wickham chair. Wickham said, "Manners maketh a man." We'll be right back.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
But you know what I've been thinking about, Chris, as I was listening to your show, the lead in here? I was thinking, like, what are they doing in China today? You know, Chris, do you know that it takes 4 hours and 18 minutes to take the bullet train from Beijing to Shanghai? And it takes 21 hours to take the train from New York to Chicago. And they're both about the same distance. I'll tell you something they weren't thinking about in China this week. They weren't thinking about some knucklehead. They weren't spending the week thinking about a knucklehead who claimed 9/11 didn't happen. They weren't thinking about some guy who's a QAnon shaman. I don't know. They were probably thinking about some bad stuff with the Uyghurs and all of that. Oh, for sure. But I guarantee you, they weren't wasting their time on this nonsense. And how do we do this? Week after week, month after month, and think we are a serious country. We are so deeply unserious as a country right now. And we need to put this crap behind us, okay? And get focused on the future. Because right now, we are going to be falling farther and farther behind. And that's what's really on my mind. And that's why I am praying for Joe Biden, because I think he's a serious guy. He's trying to do the right thing. And I think he is cursed by a Republican Party that is chasing a madman who actually encourage people to sack our capital. You have to stop and repeat that. They sacked our capital on the basis of a big lie, and now a Republican majority is going to sit on their hands and be just fine with that. Shame on them. Shame, shame, shame on them.
You know, Tom Friedman made a good point until he decided to be Tom Friedman again and stopped making a good point. You know, the point about the infrastructure is absolutely correct. It is shocking. It is embarrassing. It is embarrassing in America. It's embarrassing across Europe. It's embarrassing in the United Kingdom. The leading Western nations and economies have fallen so far behind because of their foreign adventurism. You're going to spend $5 trillion in Iraq and Afghanistan. All of this foreign aid that's been going. You know, the United Kingdom plowed billions and billions and billions in aid to India while India was developing a space program that even Britain had abandoned. How ludicrous and ridiculous has the situation got? And Tom Friedman was absolutely right about that. And then he said, I'm praying for Joe Biden because Joe Biden's a serious figure. Joe Biden was in charge when all of that was happening. Joe Biden is the one who was backing all of it. Remember, Joe Biden didn't want to kill Osama bin Laden. He wanted that whole thing to drag on out because guess what? He could spend more money and deploy more troops. You want to talk about idiots, total foreign policy idiots. Joe Biden is his picture is under the definition in the dictionary for foreign policy schmucks and schmendricks who lead this country and the Western world into the darkness, into miasma, into managed decline over and over and over again. That's Joe Biden. You want to pray for him? You need to pray for him. We all need to pray for him. But actually, we're better off spending our time praying for us, praying for ourselves, praying for our families, praying for our communities, praying for our countries. praying for Joe Biden. Joe Biden's sneaking into the back of a church, spending 15 minutes at a mass, pretending to be a Catholic, while he signs executive orders on the Mexico City policy. He wants foreign abortions. Paid for by you. Again, by you. You want that fast train between Chicago and New York? Maybe stop funding foreign abortions. You can start paying for some infrastructure in the United States. How about that, Joe Biden? You Catholic, you fake, you phony Catholic. You're pretending to be religious while you're... And by the way, you're pretending to be... Sorry, I had a second cup of coffee. Here's the thing. What color of skin do most people who get killed by the Mexico City policy change that Joe Biden... They're not white kids. They're not white children. They're not white in the... These are black and brown babies that he wants slaughtered.
People of color.
People of color. That's your Joe Biden. That's your progressive. That's who you're praying for, Mr. Tom Friedman. But, Terry, the first point is accurate. You can't pretend to be a serious nation if you're talking about QAnon shaman and you're talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene, but actually Tom Friedman should be in Jake Tapper's face, or whoever that was with him.
Chris Cuomo.
Whatever, I don't even know the difference between these guys. Should be in their faces, right? Saying, you are the ones that choose to cover this. Jeff Zucker, the New York Times, MSNBC, you're the ones that put Marjorie Taylor Greene and QAnon shaman and the sacking, he says the sacking of the Capitol, as top-line stories. And now what do we got behind me? Probably the impeachment, probably a commercial, but probably the impeachment stuff, all of this nonsense that makes America a not serious country. They're the reason for it. The media are the ones behind it. They create that whole thing. And then Tom Friedman goes on air and somehow blames that on Donald Trump, somehow blames that on Marjorie Taylor. You think Marjorie Taylor Greene wanted to be headline news for 2 weeks worth of news cycles while the economy is crumbling, while people are struggling to put food on their tables, while there's the infrastructure in the country continues to decline, Terry?
No, that's exactly right. Look, if I was Chris Cuomo in that segment, I would have felt personally attacked. Because you're exactly right. The reason we're focused on such unserious things, the Russia collusion scandal, this garbage about, members of Congress and QAnon and all of this stuff, it's because the mainstream media lets them do it. They used to set the narrative of this country. They used to have us focus on important things like getting to the moon. We should be focused on getting to Mars now. China is going to beat us. Elon Musk is going to beat the United States
That's right.
at getting to Mars.
Doge is going to beat the United States.
To the moon.
Dogecoin is going to the moon before the United States.
And it's all the media's fault, though. It is all the media's fault there.
Well, I don't know if it's all the media's fault, but the media is the driving force behind a lot of these things. And there is no mechanism by which to hold Jeff Zucker or any of these guys to account, and Bezos and all of these media moguls. All the things that liberals and progressives complain about with Rupert Murdoch are the very same things that they're doing now, and I hear not a peep from the left as to the oligarchs now, right? 10 years ago, they were saying, Occupy, Rupert Murdoch, and now it's their side. By the way, the ACLU now says it doesn't care about free speech.
Right.
The ACLU now claims we are a racial justice organization, because guess what? They don't want free speech anymore, and the left doesn't want the oligarchy change because it's their oligarchy.
No, that's exactly right. It's pathetic. And the ACLU was started... It was really a front to open the doors to progressivism and this authoritarianism that we're seeing today. They prided themselves on civil liberties, but it was really liberalism in disguise as fascism. But it's absolutely disgusting. It's terrible.
So the reason I wanted to bring you into that conversation is because the American Principles Project, your organization, is an organization which focuses heavily on all of these things, right? You started off as kind of being a more free market leading entity years and years ago. You shifted focus. You realized and recognized that what policies are going wrong and what focus is wrong in this country right now. And you shifted then to become a more kind of family orientated organization. And the underpinning of America is the American family, right? When I grew up in West London and I would watch American television, I would see Friends on the one hand, on the one side, which is all these kind of loose people living in New York City and, living their lives like degenerates. And then on the other side, you'd see all of these legacy family-orientated sitcoms and shows and all that. And I used to look at that and think, wow, that is really amazing that there is still this undergirding of the family in the United States. So tell us more about APP. There's a whole new audience to this show every single day. So start at the top, reintroduce it, and then tell us what you're working on right now.
So American Principles Project mission is very, very simple. We organize families in politics to fight the enemies of the American way of life. So
that isn't to say that you've got 6-year-olds on the front lines.
No, but we do want them involved and engaged in learning about the political process. The family is a natural institution for grooming the next generation of voters and American citizens. This is why it's so
John
important.
Weaver type grooming.
Not John Weaver. No,
grooming.
American grooming. The American experiment is so special, and it gets lost with every broken family, with every family that doesn't bring their children into this world and teach them the next generation of what the American experiment was about. Equal justice under the law, freedom, liberty, the pursuit of happiness.
Why the Electoral College matters.
Right. So we're organizing families across the country to fight these enemies of the American way of life. And they're everywhere. This impeachment scandal, what's going on with President Trump, it's not about President Trump. What it's about is it's about silencing the people and their ability to fix our elections. The Democrats are masters of communications and propaganda. They're calling their efforts that they use to destroy our electoral institutions fortification efforts. They want to fortify American democracy. What they're doing is destroying American democracy. And we're organizing families against that. And so we have to fight on these things that the media is using and that Congress is using, the Democrats in Congress are using, and that Joe Biden is using to silence us and bully us out of the public square.
So what are you working on right now? Because I know you've had some great success coming on this show in talking about the Save Women's Sports, incredibly important issue. Also, the Stop Impeachment stuff. What are the 3, 4, 5 different tracks that APP is running right now?
So the three top things are election integrity. We organize families in politics.
I'm so glad you said that.
So if politics and campaigns and elections are destroyed, APP has no role in this country. Politics is how we change the world. It's how we change the law. It's how we change our culture. And that's what we do. So our number one issue is election integrity. Secondly, we're taking on big tech. Big tech tyranny. They're censoring all of us. They want to get us out of politics. They don't think families like ours, conservatives, should have a voice in politics. So we're really focused on that. But third, we're focused on fighting this so-called Equality Act from the left. And this ties into the women's sports issue. The Democrats want to make gender identity a protected class under civil rights law. And basically by doing that, gender identity is how you choose to identify as. So you can be a male boy, a male body, and say that you're a girl. And they want to protect that as a class. And what that does is it erases women. And I'm still old enough to remember. It does. I'm still old enough.
I thought it was the right who had a war on women.
That's exactly right. Back in 2011, you remember this?
Yep.
The Democrats accused the right, Republicans, conservatives, of having a war on women. Why? Because we thought that people should have to pay for their own birth control instead of forcing nuns to have to pay for it all. It's absolutely insane. But these are the people that are literally erasing women and their opportunities in sports. And by the way, I just want to reiterate, your audience is the most powerful audience in the world. We announced that protectgirlsports.us petition on your show.
Yes.
And because of that, we've gotten 69,000 people to sign that petition.
Wow.
Those are serious numbers that Joe Biden's going to have to pay attention to, that Congress is going to have to pay attention to. And by the way, I hope you guys are all still listening.
Hang on a minute. You had 69,000 people sign up to the Save Women's Sports thing. 69,000 of you haven't downloaded my podcast yet. You have more loyalty to Terry Schilling than your own host.
Well, listen, I think it's because look.
No, I get it. Believe me, I get it. I was one of the people that signed it.
Yeah. The thing is, we're going to put them all to work. They're going to introduce the Equality Act very soon. We have another secret project that's going to be launched this week, working with some state AGs. I'm going to let you guys all know about it very soon, but we're going to put you all to work. We got to make sure our members of Congress and every elected official knows about it at the state and local and federal level. We need to protect our girls' sports, and we're going to put those 69,000 people to work. That's for sure.
Okay, so give us all the different URLs and social medias that people need to hit.
Well, the big one right now is protectgirlssports.us. If you haven't signed that, no. Not only if you have signed it, send it to your family and friends. Share it on your Facebook. Share it on your Twitter. Get everyone you know to sign it. I want to get to 100,000. That's a very important and special number. But the other one is stopimpeachment.us. And that is fighting this impeachment sham that Democrats are waging in order to silence us and our ability to fix elections to avoid another disaster like 2020.
I'm watching the numbers live on the site going up and up and up. Read the URL again.
It's protectgirlssports.us.
protectgirlssports.us. We'll put the URL in the live chat. Stick around. We got Kane from citizenfreepress.com joining us in the next segment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
When is it that the Biden administration is going to let the thousands of fossil fuel industry workers, whether it's pipeline workers or construction workers, who are either out of work or will soon be out of work because of a Biden EO, when it is and where it is that they can go for their green job? And that is something the administration has promised. There is now a gap. So I'm just curious when that happens, when those people can count on that.
Well, I'd certainly welcome you to present your data of all the thousands and thousands of people who won't be getting a green job. Maybe next time you're here, you can present that.
But you said that they would be getting green jobs, so I'm just asking when that happens. Richard Trumka, who is a friend, longtime friend of Joe Biden, says about that day one Keystone EO, he says, I wish he, the president, had paired that more carefully with the thing that he did second by saying, here's where we are creating the jobs. So there's partial evidence from Richard Trumka.
Well, you didn't include all of his interview. Would you like to include the rest?
So how about this? The Laborers International Union of North America said the Keystone decision will cost 1,000 existing union jobs and 10,000 projected construction jobs.
Well, what Mr. Trumka also indicated in the same interview was that President Biden has proposed a climate plan with transformative investments in infrastructure and laid out a plan that will not only create millions of good union jobs, but also help tackle the climate.
But there are people living paycheck to paycheck. There are now people out of jobs once the Keystone Pipeline stopped construction. It's been 12 days since Gina McCarthy and John Kerry were here, and it's been 19 days since that EO. So what are these people who need money now? When do they get their green job?
Well, the president and many Democrats and Republicans in Congress believe that investment in infrastructure, building infrastructure, that's international interests, and that boosts the U.S. economy, creates good-paying union jobs here in America, and advances our climate and clean energy goals, are something that we can certainly work on doing together. And he has every plan to share more about his details of that plan in the weeks ahead.
He has every plan to share details about his plan in the coming weeks. We've seen what every plan looks like. Jen Psaki, you are a stone cold moron. I'm not. Listen, no, I don't do this thing where I'll see a lot of people commenting about her looks and all this stuff. I couldn't care less what the press secretary looks like, okay? That's just noise. I care what the press secretary says. And what the press secretary says every day up from that podium is total and utter dross. It's dross. It's empty. It's foolish. She makes America look foolish by doing it. You got Peter Doocy, one of the nicest people in media, lighting you up. You got a problem in your hands, Jen Psaki, and that problem is you're unprepared. You're unprepared, the administration is unprepared, regime is unprepared, and you're making the country look ridiculous as a result of it. Well, just watch what happens to Biden's approval numbers over the next couple of weeks. We're bringing Kane from citizenfreepress.com, my favorite aggregator, citizenfreepress.com. Make sure you're all subscribed to that, bookmarked it, all of the like. Kane, that was just humiliating, embarrassing. But on top of that, I want to put something up on the screen here, which is the tweets I came across this morning. Get your take on this. Denver, can we put this tweet up? This is from a chap verified by Twitter, called Galen David. I have no idea who this person is, but he's verified by the Twitter powers that be. It says, Rand Paul's neighbor is a national treasure. He was trying to save our country. Rand Paul's neighbor, remember, beat him up. I think he had to have part of his lung removed as a result of what happened to Rand Paul when he was attacked by his neighbor in some altercation a year or so ago. And this guy is still allowed, and he's verified on Twitter, encouraging and inciting and glorifying violence against the sitting U.S. senator. So I wanted to make sure that Galen David is made famous today. Kane, your thoughts on all of the above?
Dross. It's Dross, man. First of all, your rant was fantastic after the Thomas Friedman piece. A quick thought on Peter Doocy and the solar panels question. Here's the thing. I put up a flashback article about a week ago. Solar panels are filled with toxic materials, and we've since learned that those materials leach into the groundwater after only about a half hour of rain. So that's something that people need to pay attention to with solar. As far as that Galen David, yeah, he's referencing. Actually, Rand Paul had his back turned. He was on the mower. I think he was pushing it. He had his back turned, and the neighbor came flying, hit him in the ribs, broke 5 ribs. He ended up getting a form of pneumonia, and yes, a part of his lung was removed. I saw quickly the tweets that you have already compiled on this Galen David. You know, it's interesting. I posted the video last week of Rand Paul and his wife being attacked after they left the White House on July 4th, surrounded, attacked by Antifa, and essentially comparing that to what, you know, AOC went through in her fantasy. A couple other thoughts since we got just a couple of minutes that I want to draw people's attention to. Anyone who's not aware, go directly to citizenfreepress.com. I put all the new headlines at the top. Something you'll see from last night that's interesting that Paul Bedard reported, which is that Biden has now ordered ICE officials to stop all deportation warnings because they cause, quote, undue stress on illegal migrants during arrests. It's insane. I've listened to the whole show this morning. It's been a fantastic show. And we have in 65 minutes, we have the Senate impeachment trial beginning. So there's a lot happening. I'll throw it back to you.
There is a lot happening, and I'm really grateful for your time. I also wanted to make mention, because I check all the SimilarWeb stats and all of that, just how insanely well Citizen Free Press is doing. I want to make sure that everybody's going over there. Great comments section, by the way, as well. I know it can be a pain to moderate these things sometimes, Kane. You're doing a phenomenal job of aggregation and the moderation of the comment section. I know you got some great plans ahead for the site as well. But I checked the Drudge Report's numbers as well. Extraordinary. Drudge did not pick up a single visitor to the site over an election period. And actually, in the world of publishing like this, Kane, that's the equivalent of losing viewers.
It is. Drudge's numbers in 2016 on SimilarWeb were about 1.4 billion page views in a month. He's lost 50%. You're referencing the January numbers. I also took a look at them. He did about 700 million page views. But here's the dirty little secret on Drudge. He has a 2-minute automatic refresh. And I've done some experiments. It's responsible for at least 40% of his page views. So knock that 700 million number down to at least 450 million.
Incredible. Kane, we got 20 seconds. I got to bounce. We'll get you on again soon. I just wanted to make sure that all the audience gets to hear from you because they love you so much. They love citizenfreepress.com, and I thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, podcast will be up later today. thenationalpulse.com/podcast. Please go and subscribe right now. warroom.org/join. Please go and subscribe right now. We'll see you again at 5 p.m.